Hey everybody, this is GGB. Today we're going to be talking about college basketball upset of the day. Tuesday edition. We're one day in. Almost got 1.5 points. Almost had it. So close. Texas Tech was so close. They forced overtime. They had a 3-point lead with 10 seconds left, and they blew it. Kansas made an incredible shot. I just got to give it to them. Forced double overtime. Texas Tech just wasn't strong enough to come out on top and double. Had open looks. They took some bad shots near the end. Didn't seem like Texas Tech honestly wanted to win. But I only get half a point. I was going to get 1.5 points because that would have been the biggest upset of the day. Because we all know Arizona State, USC ended up exactly how we would have assumed it ended up. We have many college basketball games today. There are top 25 teams, so let's look at them all real quick, and we'll go through how each of them affect things. Just really disappointed overall on how that game ended up. 6 o'clock, Clemson, we got 11. 6 o'clock, we got Clemson, which sits at 11-8. This is troublesome number 9, Duke. Duke sits at 13-3. Actually, 15-3. I'm sorry. There we go. That's better. Duke favored by 12.5 points on ESPN2. At 6 o'clock, we also got number 10, Michigan State, which sits at 15-3, traveling to number 24, Illinois, which sits at 13-5. Illinois favored by 5.5 points on ESPN. Also at 6 o'clock, we got DePaul, which is at 10-8, traveling to number 14, Villanova, which sits at 14-5. Villanova favored by 16 points on FS1. 7 o'clock, we got Kansas State, which sits at 10-8. Traveling to number 4, Baylor, which sits at 17-2. Baylor favored by 13.5 points on ESPN+. 7:30, we got number 1, Auburn, which is at 18-1, traveling to Missouri, which is at 8-10. Auburn favored by 13.5 points on the SEC Network. 7:30, we got Georgetown, which is at 6-10, traveling to number 20, UConn, which is at 13-4. UConn favored by 17 points on CBS Sports Network. 8 o'clock, we got Mississippi State, which sits at 13-5, traveling to number 12, Kentucky, which is at 15-4. Kentucky favored by 9.5 points on ESPN. And finally, 10 o'clock, we got number 3, Arizona, which is at 16-1, traveling to number 7, UCLA, which is at 13-2. Arizona favored by 2.5 points on ESPN. So let's start with the ACC real quick. Again, only 2 teams are playing from here, but we should pay attention to it a little bit because again, Duke sitting there. Duke with a win moves to 6-2, and what's important about 6-2? Well, if you get to 6-2, you're tied for first place between Miami, Florida State, and you. So obviously a big game for Duke to get back into that first place conversation. Very close to getting back in there if you're Duke. Now a Duke loss moves into 5-3. 5-3 is bad. 5 is like as good it is to get a 6-2 tied for first place. 5-3 is horrible because right now you're tied for third place with Notre Dame, right? It's at 5-2 with a loss by Duke, by the way. You lose this game for Duke. Obviously, you lose the tie with Notre Dame. So suddenly Notre Dame's third place, right? Then you got Wake Forest, which sits at 7-3. Much better record than 5-3, wouldn't you say? They move into fourth place. Then suddenly Duke falls, and you're tied for fifth place with UNC. So obviously, bad case scenario there for Duke. Clemson, on the other hand, with a win, moves to 4-5. Not a big deal other than it breaks the tie they right now have with Syracuse and Boston College. Right now, Clemson is tied for 9th place. With a win, they break the tie. They are the only person in 9th place. With a loss, you fall to 3-6. And suddenly, that's a win. That's a win if you're a Syracuse or Boston College fan, and it's a win if you're anyone under that, NC State, Virginia Tech, those kind of fans. Okay, so if Clemson falls to 3-6, Syracuse and Boston College will have the only tie for 9th place. Clemson will tie into a fall for 11th place with NC State. So suddenly NC State has company for 11th place. That's ideal if you're NC State. So if you're a Syracuse fan, a Boston College fan, or an NC State fan, or even a Virginia Tech or Pitt fan who's not that far behind, you would be a huge fan of Duke this weekend because you know realistically you probably aren't going to catch them. You can catch Clemson. That's who you're rooting for here. If you are a Notre Dame, Florida State, Wake Forest, Miami, UNC fan, any of those fans, you're a huge fan of Clemson today. Moving on to the Big Ten. We only got one game going on in the Big Ten, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, we only have one big game going on in the Big Ten, but it's a big one. Got Michigan State, which is sole first place right now, and you have Illinois, who's tied for second. Illinois on a 2-game losing streak, desperately wants to change that. Obviously, Michigan State with a win stays in first place. Now, Illinois with a win moves to 7-2. Michigan State falls to 6-2. So with a win, Illinois takes back that first place lead. And Michigan State loses, they fall into a tie for second place with Wisconsin. So big game here in the Big Ten. Again, if you're in Ohio, if you're a Wisconsin fan, I'm sure you would like an Illinois win because then you're very close. So basically, Wisconsin. Probably if you're below that, like Ohio State or Purdue, you would also like a Illinois win. At least makes it within striking distance for you. So that's the bright side of that. That's the only thing I have to say about that. Big East has 2 games going on, so we'll touch on the Big East real quick. Big East has DePaul playing Villanova and Georgetown playing UConn. So obviously, Georgetown and DePaul are the 2 statistical worst teams in the Big East, sitting in conference. Villanova loss would move them to 7-3. Still would have second place, by the way. So no matter what happens today, Villanova is staying in second place. So if they win, they move to 8-2. Still not better than Providence's 6-1 record. With a loss, they fall to 7-3. Still not as bad as Marquette's 6-3 record. So again, no matter what happens today, you're good if you're Villanova. Now, if UConn is to pull off the victory against Georgetown, which is the likely scenario, right? They move to 5-2. It's a 71% win percentage. If you're wondering, Marquette sits at 6-3, and if you're wondering about that, it's a 66% win percentage. UConn with a win passes Marquette. So again, that's not great if you're Marquette. Also, you got to worry about Creighton. Creighton, technically speaking, is not in the top 25, so I shouldn't be talking about them. But if you're Marquette, you're rooting for Georgetown and you're rooting for Butler, who's playing Creighton today. So on the other side of things, Georgetown and DePaul, again, I guess I said it before, but if Georgetown wins this game, they move to 1-5. It's not a good win percentage. It's only a 16% win percentage, but it'd be better than DePaul's 1-7. But if they were to 1-8, if they lose. Now, if they were to also win their game, they'd move to 2-7, which would be better than Georgetown's 1-5. So if DePaul wins the game, again, 2-7 is... So, weirdly enough, if you're DePaul, and you end up upsetting number 14 Villanova, 16-point favorites, but you have a good enough team together that it's conceivable if you're DePaul. You are going to be watching also relatively closely around the same time, but the Butler-Creighton game. Because if Butler was to also lose that game, and you win this game, you are sitting at 2-7, and Butler also is sitting at 2-7, right? This is the likely scenario if DePaul wins, and suddenly you're tied for, let me do the quick calculations real quick. You're tied for 9th place instead of being in 10th place by yourself. Obviously, a loss here for DePaul and a Georgetown win, but Georgetown would pass them. And just a loss for DePaul and a loss by Georgetown, they don't move, they stay in second to last place. So that's what's going on in the Big East. We'll touch on the SEC, Big 12. We didn't touch on the Big 12 yet. Big 12, we got one game going on. That's Kansas State Baylor. Baylor, obviously, with a win, you move to 6-2. You're half game behind Kansas for first place. A loss moves you to 5-3, and you're tied with Texas Tech again for second place in the Big 12 right now. If with a win, you have sole position to the second place. With a loss, you are tied for second place again. Kansas State, on the other hand, tied for last place with Iowa State and Oklahoma. Obviously, with a win, you move into, I believe, 8th place. So you move into 8th place with a win. Kansas State, with a loss, moves into sole possession of last place. Obviously, an ideal for Kansas State, but honestly, they're playing better than a lot of the teams in the Big 12 are right now, so that's props to them. That's all that's really going to happen in the Big 12. Not a whole lot going on there. We'll go to the SEC real quick. The SEC's got some stuff going on. Auburn is obviously playing Missouri, and Mississippi State's playing Kentucky, and so 3 of the top 4 teams are playing tonight. Maybe even Texas A&M. Let's check them real quick. Texas A&M is actually playing LSU at 8 o'clock. I don't have that on here. I don't know. But we're going to assume Texas A&M's not playing because I don't know. Maybe LSU's just not ranked anymore. It's possible. They've lost 3 in a row, so it's likely. So let's say Texas A&M is playing tomorrow. So ideally for Kentucky, so let's talk about Auburn real quick. Auburn with the win obviously stays in first place. Auburn, even with a loss, stays in first place because they would have a 7-1 record. And best case scenario for everyone else, best case scenario for Kentucky, they win the game. They sit at 6-2. Auburn sits at 7-1. So obviously, if you're Kentucky, you're rooting for Missouri today, but it's not going to get you in first place. Kentucky with a loss would move them to 5-3. Mississippi State would also obviously pick up the victory, move to 5-2. So with a Kentucky loss, you move to 5-3. And Mississippi State moves to 5-2. They probably move into second place. Texas A&M plays LSU. If Texas A&M is to win that game, they also move to 5-2. They're ahead of you. If they lose that game, they'll fall to 4-3. They move into the tie. So best case scenario for Texas A&M with the loss, you sit in third. Kentucky with the loss, you sit in third place. Obviously, Mississippi State would overtake you. Obviously, got to talk about what happens if Mississippi State loses. And Mississippi State loses, and Texas A&M loses, you could enter the hole. The hole is obviously the Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, all sit at 4-3 in conference. It's the big tie. Obviously, you have number 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then fifth place is tied between 3 different teams. And then eighth place, I think, 8th place is tied between 2 other teams. So it's rather close in the SEC, if I'm going to be honest, between some of these teams. Yeah, Mississippi State with a loss would fall into the hole. They would fall into the little gap. So don't lose in Mississippi State. If Texas A&M also lost, you could end up having a pretty sizable hole. You could have Kentucky in second place and everyone tied for third, which would be pretty amazing. On the other hand, I also got to talk about Missouri for a second. Missouri is obviously sitting in third to last place. They've lost their last game, which isn't that bad, but still. They're actually tied. If you're looking at it, they're tied for third to last place. They're tied with South Carolina, Vanderbilt. With a win, as improbable as it would be for Missouri to pull off this humongous upset, you would move to 3-4, and 3-4 gets you tied for 8th place, which, considering you're moving from third to last place to tied for 8th place with LSU and Florida, both big names that had a lot of expectations heading into the year. So, I mean, there's some positives there. If you're looking at it from Mizzou, they have a chance there to move up that high. And then, real quick, we got one more conference to touch on, and that's the Pac-12. Pac-12, obviously, 2 top teams are playing. Arizona sits at 6-0. UCLA can make a play for this, by the way. If UCLA is to pull off this upset at home, right, UCLA moves to 6-1 because of the win, and Arizona moves to 6-1 with the loss, right? Suddenly, UCLA is tied for first place in the Pac-12, so they can make a play for this thing. Big game tomorrow night. Also, with a loss, obviously Arizona with a win stays in first place. They stay undefeated in conference. With a loss for UCLA, you fall to 5-2, which isn't good. Obviously, USC passes you. That's what you're rooting for if you're USC in this scenario, so you can pass your rival in the Bruins. Although there's an argument to be made, this is a no-lose situation for USC, so either UCLA loses and you move into second place, or Arizona loses, they both sit at 6-1 and are only 1 game ahead. You're only 1 game out of first. So, I mean, this is a no-lose situation for USC, but obviously UCLA, if you lose this game, Oregon, you're rooting for a loss, honestly. I'm Oregon, I'm rooting for a loss for UCLA. UCLA would drop into a tie for third place with Oregon. Oregon would obviously move into a tie for third place. Right now, they sit all by themselves in fourth. So, no, I just went over a lot of games that might have been a little bit overwhelming for you guys. There's a lot of games going on here today. But if I had to pick a game, I feel like I got to go Illinois. I know I'm not doing some flashy picks this week. I did some flashy picks in it last week, and I hit on some, but I just got to go with the safe one. Illinois is playing at they're a good basketball team. They might not be, might have had a bad week last week, but they're still a team that can be first place in the Big Ten, I believe. They have a really good basketball team put together. Michigan State's obviously coming off a huge win against Wisconsin. Illinois obviously wants to prove that they're better than their performance against Maryland. I think they will. I think this is going to be one of the best games of the week. But give me the Fighting Illini to upset the Spartans at home, especially considering they're at home.